Hello guys, so in today's video we shall be working on something I'd like to call the Multiverse Files, where I'm going to be talking about everything from the multiverse. So yeah, I'd also like to say I've been working on this for a long time, like since the beginning of my channel, like the revamped version. Believe me or not, I used to play video games on here and all that. Those are all unlisted now. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video. I do have two things to say. One, this is not my original script, sadly enough. This is the wiki script because I don't really feel like going through and buying the books right now. I do have Watchmen, but I haven't finished it yet. Um, I do know the story and ending to it. I just haven't physically finished the story. But yeah. Also, I do have to say that there is violence, rape, and that an assault mentioned. So viewer discretion is advised. Alright, with those being noted, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hit subscribe, hit like button if you can, and yeah, let's get to it. Walter Joseph Kovacks. Biological information. Born March 21st, 1940. Died November 2nd, 1985. Cause of death: killed by Dr. Manhattan, alias Rorschach. Occupations: garment worker, formerly. Costume adventurer. Affiliations: crime busters, formerly. Family information: father, Charlie. Mother, Sylvia Kovacks. Earth, unknown. Rorschach, real name Walter Joseph Kovacks, was a violent and ruthless vigilante who was driven by moral absolution. When the Keene Act banned costume adventurers, he went undercover and continued illegally, where all others folded. Rorschach used to wear a piece of cloth that was moving and shifting ink blots that resembled an actual Rorschach test as a mask. He considered this his true face. Rorschach had been one of the members of the Crime Busters, but continued his one-man battle against crime long after costume vigilantes became both detested and illegal. He was killed by Dr. Manhattan to maintain peace brought about by danger and bite. Biography. Early life. Troubled childhood. Rorschach's real name is Walter Joseph Kovacks, and he was born on March 21st, 1940, to Sylvia Kovacks and her semi-permanent lover. While Sylvia was pregnant, everyone told her to have an abortion, but nonetheless she gave birth. His father had left her 2 months earlier, and all that Walter knew about him was the name Charlie, and that he and his mother would argue about politics, as he supported President Harry S. Truman. Apparently, this explanation was made up by Sylvia, as Charlie had disappeared 5 years before Truman's term. Due to his mother's explanation, Walter fantasized about an exaggeration to his father's admiration, thinking that he was sort of an aide to President Truman and probably out of country during the World War II on a type of mission. He imagined him a man of justice, perhaps an ideal model for his own beliefs, and supposed that he might have been killed by Nazis, which will explain why he never returned to them. Sylvia started working as a prostitute in order to survive, but also abused him for interfering with her business. In one incident, possibly at the age of 10 or younger, Walter heard his mother having intercourse with a client and approached. Thinking he was hurting her, as he entered the room, the man became angry and left only $5, far less than anticipated. In her rage, she began to beat Walter, calling him ugly little bastard, shouting that she should have listened to everyone and had the abortion. In July of 1951, at the age of 10, Walter went to get something from the grocery for his mother. He stopped by two older bullies who called him whoreson. One smashed fruit in his face, and the other, joking that he had some sort of disease, told him to pull down his pants so they could give him an examination. Walter snatched a cigarette from Richie's mouth and stuck it in his eye, partially blinding him, and tackled the other, viciously tugging his hair and biting his face. The people near the street pulled him off, referring to his wildness as a mad dog. When questioned about his incident, Walter refused to talk about his motivation for attacking the boys, leaving the others to presume that the assault was unprovoked. Due to this event, the circumstances of Walter's life at home was investigated, and it was revealed that he had been regularly beaten, exposed to the worst excesses of a prostitute's lifestyle. Thus, was decided for him to be put under state care. Charlton Home. Kovacks was admitted to the Lillian Charlton Home for Problem Children in New Jersey, away from his mother's negative influence. It was noted that Kovacks proved to be an intelligent and stable, doing very well at schoolwork, excelling particularly in the fields of literature and religious education. He possessed also impressive skills in the areas of gymnastics and amateur boxing, although he engaged in interesting discussions with his classmates and teachers. He was shy and withdrawn, especially towards girls. At the age of 11, he wrote an essay on the subject My Parents, in which he barely mentions his mother, only discussing the absence of his father and who he thinks his father was. Kovacks went on to say that how he liked President Truman and thought that by dropping the atom bomb on Hiroshima, had saved millions of lives, because had he not done that, so many more people would have died from war. On May 27, 1953, while 13, Walter told one of the employees about a nightmare he suffered, and they wrote a transcription of the verbal recounting. He describes that a man was with his mom, and they were eating stuff like raw dough. His mother choked on a piece, and the man tried to fish it out of her throat. He told Kovacks to get a doctor, and he looked but realized that there was no doctor in his home. When walking one of the hallways, he saw the man and his mom dancing without clothes on. When one got nearer, he saw that they were squished together, joined at the face, chest, and stomach. He recalls the way they were blended together and how they stared toward him like a crab, and looked down to see his trousers and underwear wrapped around his feet. Then he woke up, explaining that the dream upset him physically. During his years at school, Sylvia Kovacks never attempted to make contact with her son. In 1956, his mother was found in an alleyway in the South Bronx, murdered through the forced ingestion of Drano cleaning fluid by her pimp. When the news was broken to Walter at the age of 16, he just said one word. Good. Becoming Rorschach, a new face. Soon after Walter left the Charlton home, he started living in a series of low-rent apartments. He took up full employment in a minimal capacity as an unskilled manual worker within the garment industry. He described to Malcolm Long, job bearable but unpleasant, had to handle female clothing. In 1962, there was a special order for the dress in a new Dr. Manhattan spin-off fabric. The customer was a young girl with an Italian name, Kitty Genovese, who didn't accept it, saying the dress looked ugly. Walter thought otherwise, and since no one had wanted the dress, he believed it was meant for him. So he took it home and learned how to cut it using heated implements to reseal the latex. Soon he became bored and thought the fabric had no use, leaving it in his trunk and forgetting about it. 2 years afterward, in March of 1964, he bought a newspaper and saw the customer had been raped and tortured outside of her apartment building while her neighbors just watched. Not calling the police because of this, Kovacks learned what people were behind all the evasions and self-deprecation. Being ashamed for humanity, he took the remains of her unwanted dress and made a new face. He claimed that he could bear a look in the mirror. Meeting Night Owl. Wearing his new face, Kovacs decided to become a costume adventurer by the name of Rorschach, taken from Herman Rorschach, who created the Rorschach ink blot test. Continuing his work in the garment factory, Kovacs started his nocturnal lifestyle by fighting crime. The following year, 1965, he partnered with fellow costume vigilante Night Owl, whose tactical skills and resources complemented his own skills as an investigator. Rorschach's grappling hook was designed and built for him by Night Owl. During that time, they fought against the gangs and were successful against several major crime boss figures, including Underboss and Big Figure. The Crime Busters. The next year, April 1966, Nelson Gardner, otherwise known as Captain Metropolis, the same man who co-founded the Minutemen, attempted to form a new group of superheroes called the Crime Busters. When discussing the group's creation with Rorschach, his partner, Night Owl comedian Dr. Manhattan, Ozymandias, and Silk Spectre, Rorschach commented that while he had success with Night Owl, a group that size seemed more like a publicly exercise and was too big and unwieldy. Rorschach felt admiration for the comedian's forceful personality and his courage to face reality as it is. The participants left the mansion, and Rorschach sneaked behind the bushes. The Kidnapping of Blair Rorschach. For a long time, Rorschach described himself as a soft on scum, too young to know any better. Molly coddled them. Let them live. His pattern continued into 1975, when Blair Rorschach, a 6-year-old child, was kidnapped because Gerald Anthony Grease thought she had been connected to the Rorschach chemical fortune. Rorschach's father was a bus driver, and the family was not in any way wealthy. Rorschach had personal reasons for taking the case and intervened, promising the parents he'd returned unharmed. He visited underworld bars, putting 14 people in the hospital needlessly, but the 15th gave him an address to Modern Modes, an unused dressmaker shop in Brooklyn. Rorschach arrived at the unit building at dusk while Grease was out. He checked the backyard and saw 2 attack dogs, German shepherds named Frank and Barney, fighting over a knob of bone. He broke in through the front door and examined the house. In the nearby wood-burning stove, he found a piece of children's clothing. One of the cabinets was filled with meat-hacking utensils. In the kitchen was a large cutting slab with thick cuts on it. He peered out the window, out at the dogs. He looked at the bone they were fighting over. It was a femur, a human bone. He went into the yard and cut one dog's head open with a meat cleaver. It was at that moment, when he closed his eyes, he opened them again, that he claimed to no longer be Walter Joseph Kovacs. He was now Rorschach. He then used the meat cleaver to kill the other dog. Grease was out drinking when he entered and returned at 10:45 that night. When he walked into the house, Rorschach threw the bloody corpse of one, then the other dog, on him through the window. Knocking him to the ground silently, Rorschach grabbed and handcuffed him to a furnace. While Grease screamed that Rorschach had no evidence of what he did, Rorschach left a hacksaw by his head, then started to pour kerosene through the house and pulled out a match, telling Grease that he couldn't saw through the cups in time, suggesting Grease saw through his wrist. Rorschach dropped the match and stood outside, watching the house burn to the ground for an hour, and realized the emptiness of human existence. The Keene Act. After the incident, Rorschach quit his job as a garment worker. He started now working mostly alone, driven crazy, as the comedian remarked. During the police strike of 1977, Rorschach made some inflammatory comments about the police that were never forgotten. During the riots, Rorschach tried alone to quiet the unrest of the Lower East Side. The Keene Act was passed, outlawing costume adventurers, deeming their retirements. Enraged and defiant, he answered by leaving the corpse of notorious multiple rapist Harvey Charles Furness in front of the police station with a note pinned on his chest. reading, "Never." True to his word, Rorschach continued fighting crime in open defiance of the law. Living in a slum owned by his landlady, Doris Sharp, without any source of income during the day, he could be seen walking around the streets of New York City without his face or costume, as a vagrant with a sign that reads, "The end is nigh." The Mass Killer Conspiracy. Eddie Blake's murder on October 12, 1985, a man named Edward Blake was thrown out of his apartment window, and Rorschach wrote his first journal entry. Using the grappling hook given to him by Night Owl, Rorschach climbed to the 4th floor and investigated Blake's home, discovering his secret identity as a comedian. In attempting to discover the murderer's motivation, Rorschach develops the mass killer theory. Someone is attempting to kill all existing costume vigilantes. Considering this is a possible cause makes Rorschach feel obligated to inform the other mask about the threat of their lives. First on the list to warn his old partner, Dan Drillberg, formerly known as Night Owl, he enters his apartment by breaking in the lock and eating a can of cold baked beans. He tosses Drillberg the comedian's badge that he picked up from the blood-drenched sidewalk. Drillberg suggests an ordinary burglary or political killing, but Rorschach persists with his mass killer theory. He recalls when they were partners and Drillberg pleasantly remarks, "Those were great times. Whatever happened to them?" While leaving through the tunnels in Night Owl's workshop, Rorschach replies, "You quit." Rorschach writes an entry in his journal on October 13th and walks to Happy Henry's Bar and Grill to ask questions. He tells Happy Henry about the incident, then breaks Steve's fingers, calling out for anyone to tell him some information. No one knew anything, so he left for Adrian Veidt's office, warning him and listening to his political killing opinion. At 8:30 p.m., he wrote his second journal entry, while breaking into the Rockefeller Military Research Center to find John Osterman, a.k.a. Dr. Manhattan, and Lurie Jupiter, a.k.a. Silk Spectre. Osterman explains how he has no reason to care for human life, and Lurie expresses her hate for the comedian. At 11:30 p.m., Rorschach writes another entry while walking through a dark alleyway towards his apartment. Investigation. On October 16th, Kovacks was outside the cemetery during Edward Blake's funeral. He noticed Edgar Jacoby, once the villain known as Malik, there, and had already broken into his home. Bursting out of his refrigerator, he asked why he had attended the funeral since they had been enemies for 40 years, and how he knew his name. Jacoby explained that Blake had broken into his room and rambled about someone trying to mess with the big blue geek, and about an island with writers, scientists, and artists. Deciding Edgar didn't know anything, Rorschach left after examining a bottle of illegal pills called Laterally. Jacoby explained that he needed the medication since he had cancer. Writing another entry, Rorschach broke into the cemetery and paid his last respects to Blake without fuss. Taking one of the roses, Jacoby left. The other week, Kovacks kept visiting Bernard, who made tongue-in-cheek comments about the world. Kovacks claimed it would happen that day, and before leaving he asked Bernard to keep his new frontiersman for tomorrow. After the disappearance of Dr. Manhattan, on October 20th, Kovacks pays a visit to Bernard. He then breaks into Dan Drillberg's home, breaking the new lock installed by Gordon Not Lock Co. After Rorschach had broken a new one and eating some cereal with coffee, he startled sleeping Drillberg, showing him a copy of the New York Gazette that reads, "Dr. Manhattan leaves Earth," pursuing his mass killer theory more heavily since the second mask has been exiled. He leaves, but not before snatching a bottle of nostalgia. Rorschach hadn't slept since Saturday. On October 21st, he breaks into Jacoby's home once again after midnight, this time shoving him into a refrigerator and is slowly starting to unravel the plot of the murder. Rorschach leaves the house, thus writing one entry before leaving Jacoby's house. And then another after leaving his apartment and seeing Drillberg and Lori come out of the Gooner diner. He sits in the diner and watches his mail drop across the street, the trash can on the corner, waiting for Jacoby to leave a message. Writing his final entry on October 21st, he has learned of an attempted assassination of Adrian Bright's life, which is further proof of his mass killer theory. He reads a note from Jacoby that tells him to call at 11:30 p.m., then picks out his outfit and face from the alleyway where he left it, on his way to interrupt an attempted rape / mugging / both. Breaking another lock that Jacoby installed, Rorschach enters his apartment and asks about the list that mentioned Dr. Manhattan and his associates, pointing out that both heroes were disposed of enemies to Moloch. He then found that Moloch had been shot through the head. Stephen Fine and Joe Bergen were outside and with the police force, and someone with a megaphone outside calls to Rorschach, stating that he is surrounded by the police. Realizing he has been framed, he searches for a sort of protection, grabbing a bottle of Vite Formain hairspray and matches. When the cops burst in, he torches Officer Shaw, then lights the stairs aflame while running up them. He throws pepper in Willis's eyes, then shoots Officer Charlie Greaves with a grappling hook at point-blank range, before leaping through the bedroom window. While trying to get up, he is surrounded and beaten, and his mask revealed, revealing his identity. Prison. During the bail hearing, Rorschach never responds to anything. Prison, Kovacs is subjected to regular mental treatment from a clinical psychologist named Malcolm Long. Long anticipated treating Kovacs, believing that his extreme vigilantism would open a way to identification of his syndrome, participating to mass vigilantes. In their first meetings, he examines Kovacs' opinions through the Rorschach ink blot test. Though Rorschach tells Malcolm that he sees pretty butterflies and flowers, while he actually sees pictures much more gruesome, like a dog with its head split in, or the night when he walked in on his mother with John. Kovacs' time in prison consists of relentless death threats. At one incident in the food line, a monstrous man named Otis holds a prisoner's shiv to his back, and Rorschach grabs a canister of hot cooking fat, smashing it into his face, giving him severe burns. As the guards haul Kovacs solitarily, he screams to the other inmates, "None of you understand. I'm not locked up here with you. You're locked up in here with me." Later, Rorschach tells Malcolm Long a lot about his childhood and growing up to become Rorschach, eventually telling him about the kidnapped girl that transformed him. Soon after, Long is affected by the reality of Rorschach's views, and he also begins seeing darkness in everything. We later learn that Otis is dying, and when he dies, there is likely to be a prison riot in an attempt to take Kovacs' life. Big Figure convinces Kovacs' guard, Muherney, to leave for 5 minutes. With Big Figure are his cronies, Michael and Lawrence. They give Kovacs a death threat. On October 31st, Halloween night, Big Figure and his cronies return with an arc welder to get through the lock. Kovacs insults Lawrence, who reaches through the bars trying to grab him. Using his shredded shirt, Rorschach ties Lawrence's 2 smallest fingers together, breaking them in the process. Because Lawrence is in the way, Michael is forced to sever all Lawrence's arms, pushing him aside and using the arc welder. Kovacs' monotone is 1-0. Your move. While Michael is breaking through, Rorschach gets to the top of his bed and kicks open the toilet bowl, which splits water onto the floor. The poorly insulated arc welder electrifies Michael as the wire on the floor, killing him. Never disposed of a sewage with toilet before. Obviously, really. 2-0. Your move. Terrified, Big Figure runs to the prison, eventually hiding in a restroom. Meanwhile, Night Owl and Silk Spectre have broken into the prison to meet up with Kovacs. But he tells them he needs to take care of something before they leave and follow Big Figure into the men's room. Lori could hear a bumping noise, and Dan heard the toilet flush as Rorschach kills Big Figure. They then escape on Archie. Antarctica. Rorschach and Jailbird ride to Kovac's apartment, picking up spare clothes in his journal, where they run into his landlady, Doris Sharp. In a rare display of pity for the prostitute's children, Rorschach forgives her lies about him to the papers, and they decide to go back to the cave to sort things out. Upon arriving, John returns, claiming that Lori is going to attempt to convince him to save the world. Lori accepts, leaving Night Owl and Rorschach alone. Night Owl ponders the assassination attempt on Adrian and notes that it was a hired killer. And Rorschach says they go out and check the bars, interrogate people, mocking his partner for lazing. This causes Dan to angrily snap at Rorschach about how he lives off others while insulting them. And nobody complains because they think you're a goddamn lunatic. Dan goes about how hard it is for him to be his friend to him, then suddenly stops and apologizes for his outburst, saying that he shouldn't have said any of that. Rorschach then, to Dan's surprise, exhibits a rare moment of empathy, offering his hand in an apology for his actions. Daniel, you are a good friend. I know that. I am sorry that this is sometimes difficult. Dan accepts it, and the two head over to Happy Harry's to ask more questions. There they learn that a man works for the Pyramid Deliveries delivered the note to a hitman, Roy Victor Ches, with instructions to kill Adrian Veidt. They also learn of Mason's death on TV, prompting Night Owl to assault a nearby member of the Knot Tops and forcing Rorschach to restrain him. They visit Veidt's office, where Night Owl guesses the password to his computer, discovering that Veidt owns both of Pyramid Deliveries and Dimensional Developments, and was behind his own assassination attempt. Now convinced Veidt is behind everything, Night Owl and Rorschach head for Antarctica. After Rorschach writes his final journal entry and mails it to persons unknown. Archie breaks down and crashes due to the unbearable cold temperatures of Antarctica. They take Night Owl's hoverbike the rest of the way to Veidt's hideout and resort, contending Veidt's plan and motives there. Rorschach and Night Owl are beaten easily by Veidt. Rorschach continues to attempt to grapple him from behind and stab him with a fork, but with no luck. Veidt is faster, as well as extremely perceptive. Refusing to compromise. Rorschach learns that Adrian Veidt used his genetically engineered alien monster to kill 3 million people in New York City. Dr. Manhattan and Lori Jupiter join them, trying to stop Veidt, but they learn that humanity has called off the war. Now that there was a greater force to handle, they all decide not to tell anyone the secret, so that the world may become somewhat of a utopia. Everyone except Rorschach. He tries to leave on one of the hoverbikes, but Manhattan stops him. Rorschach removes his mask, tears streaming down his face, knowing that Veidt's new utopia is protected with the cost of his own life, and prompts Manhattan to disintegrate him. Rorschach's journal. The truth revealed. Following the attack of New York, Rorschach's journal renamed Untouched in the New Frontiersman's Crank File. Since the same year, Smith, the editorial assistant of the newspaper, failed to destroy all previous Crank submissions in 1986. It remains to be discovered by the newspaper in January 1987. Seymour asked by actor Godfrey to write a filler piece for the next publication from the Crank file. The young man reaches towards the pile of discarded submissions. Near the top lies Rorschach's journal. Hello guys. Oh, I can't have that. Alright, so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Yeah. It did take me a minute to make. And yes, again, I did get this from a wiki article. But yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm currently now having to deal with the hassle of editing this. So yeah. Give me suggestions on some other stuff I should work on. I don't actually know what the next episode should be. Just give me your suggestions. I'll do anything from the DC Multiverse, Omniverse, whatever. Even the negative universes that we know nothing of besides the Batman Who Laughs and the 5 other guys. But yeah, love you guys. Bye.